the great white shark, and the killer whale, two top predators of the sea. Animals so dangerous, they wouldn't dare challenge one another. Or so we thought.
Is he eating the shark?
Then, off the coast of California, it happens. The ultimate clash of the titans, leaving biologists mystified.
It was unprecedented. It kind of blew our minds.
And a team of experts scrambling to make sense of the carnage. Good. And revealing new insights into the battle between two of the world's most aggressive predators. This is great white shark territory. The Farallones, a string of barren islands just 27 miles off the coast of San Francisco. Every fall, the Farallones host one of the world's largest gatherings of great white sharks. Thousands of seals and sea lions that assemble here. The great whites hide out in deep waters, then catch their prey in surprise attacks. They bite with a force approaching 2 tons, then withdraw to a safe distance while their victim bleeds to death. Great whites are the ultimate killers of the sea. They dominate the ocean food chain. Peter Pyle and other scientists have been watching great white sharks feed at the Farallones since 1987.
Well, the white shark is really an incredible creature. We call it the keystone species on the Farallones because it kind of controls the ecology there, the ecosystem all the way down.
They know these animals better than anyone.
We were able to watch them up close doing feeding events and started documenting individuals, which greatly improved our awareness of the shark presence around the island.
After a decade of research, the Farallon biologists have built a detailed picture of the great white shark. But then, one extraordinary event changes everything. October 4th, 1997. Pyle is stationed on southeast Farallon when he responds to a report of a shark attack coming from day trippers on a whale-watching boat called the Superfish.
No, right there. Right there.
Oh my God.
But this isn't an ordinary shark attack. This time, the shark is the victim. Pyle.
And as we approached, you could see the killer whale moving along with its dorsal fin up with this white shark in its mouth underwater.
But they're too late. The battle is over. And the great white shark is already in pieces. But his colleague, naturalist Mary Jane Schramm, on board the Superfish, saw everything. She set out from San Francisco earlier that morning.
We were doing a whale watch nature cruise out to the Farallon Islands. We had an early departure, went out through the Golden Gate. Everybody wanted to see whales that day. We thought we would see humpbacks. We hoped we would see blues. About half an hour away from the islands, Captain Mick, who's known as the whale watching captain around here, was radioed by one of the fishing party boats.
Mick, you pick me up? Good night, Jay.
7 miles ahead of them, skipper Jay Yokomizo, the owner of a sport fishing boat, is the first to see killer whales at the islands that morning.
I was just scanning the horizon, looking around, and all of a sudden 2 orcas just cruised right across the bow, porpoising out of the water on a mission.
Killer whales are a rare sight at the Farallones, so Yokomizo immediately calls the skipper of the Superfish, Mick Menigo.
Yeah, I got 2 orcas off my port bow.
Oh, very good. Very good. Where are you? As he was telling me that the orcas were there at the main island, all of a sudden he got very excited. He said, hey, wait, what? Hey, they killed a sea lion. They're eating a sea lion. And he was, this is all on the radio.
When the birds just exploded and started hovering and diving down, I knew there was a kill.
The killer whales began their day by taking down a California sea lion.
I was still like half an hour, 40 minutes away. I just punched the throttles up, make the jump to light speed, trying to get there as quickly as possible, see if we can get some of this action. And we pulled in about 20 minutes after that, and sure enough, the orcas were still there. 11 o'clock, right out there. Look at that, over there.
We were extremely excited. I've been out to the Farallones at that point probably 100 times and had seen killer whales maybe on 1 or 2 other occasions, so this was remarkable.
Now, finished with their meal, the orcas turned to entertaining the whale watchers.
We had been alerted that they'd already killed a sea lion, but we didn't see the sea lion floating at the surface.
They were doing what orcas do, they're like a giant dolphin. They were just messing around the boat, swimming down and back up and stuff. Very friendly.
The tourists on board think it's a mother whale with her calf.
And we noticed that one of them was significantly smaller than the other. In fact, we were speculating whether the one might have been a calf or, we weren't really quite sure.
20 minutes later, something catches Schramm's eye.
I happened to look down and notice this large, dark shape moving right next to the boat. It obviously was not another killer whale. It was a very big shark. And white shark, this was October, this is white shark season. That is precisely what came to mind. It slid along the side of the boat, so it was hugging the boat very close, moving from bow toward the stern. But then about midway, it abruptly made a 45-degree angle turn and started swimming away from the boat.
The great white is now swimming toward the killer whales.
So at that point, things started getting even more interesting.
All of a sudden, one of the orcas made a beeline in this direction.
It swam out on an intercept path with the white shark.
The killer whale and the great white disappear below the waves.
There was a splash and then nothing.
We were kind of collectively holding our breath. There was no blood, there was no thrashing around. It was only when the killer whale emerged from the distance coming back toward the boat carrying this shark in its mouth that we actually knew what had gone down.
This is really, really strange.
This orca came up next to the boat holding this now what appeared to be dead white shark by the back of the neck and held it up for us like a cat with a mouse, just showing off.
Is he eating the shark? I couldn't see.
It was holding the white shark inverted, and the white shark was motionless at that point, and it swam for a while with this upside-down white shark in its mouth.
The whale watchers are astonished. Even the experienced crew is mesmerized.
The reaction on the boat as this was going on was sheer amazement.
What's happening? They're right together.
This was something that had myself and Mary Jane Schramm all just dropping our jaw. This was a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
We're thinking, what is it we're seeing here?
The crew of the Superfish knows they're witnessing something never seen before.
Pete, pick me up. I got an orca over here with a white shark. I was trying to get a hold of Peter Pyle, who was a biologist on the island, and he says, what's going on? I'm kind of busy. And I said, Peter, get over here. I said, I can't tell you exactly what's going on. I said, but it involves an orca and a white shark, and the white shark's dead. And it seemed like seconds later, boom, here comes Peter on this little boat, like a blur.
It was a bit of an intimidating sight. An orca there with a white shark in its mouth. So I sort of circled it a couple times, hoping that I would be able to figure out exactly how to film this. And I had my pole camera, which is a video camera in an underwater housing on a long pole, and I was able to put that underwater next to the boat. The killer whale dropped the white shark carcass and it started to sink. The liver from the shark, however, had popped up out of the shark and came up near the boat. And both of the whales then came toward the liver. And I was able to get footage of the two killer whales feeding on the liver itself.
The two killer whales spend 15 minutes feeding on the remains of the shark before they swim away. The birds are left with scraps, and the eyewitnesses are left dazed.
It was a complete surprise to us to see an orca take a white shark. We just had no idea that could happen.
The contest between the two giants answers one classic question.
That matchup was kind of what a biologist would sit around a campfire and talk about. You know, who's the biggest, baddest in the ocean, a white shark or an orca?
Who would win? Well, certainly on this particular day, we had our answer.
But the circumstances surrounding this great matchup are strange. Killer whales don't normally come to the Farallones.
In the 17 years that I'd spent on the Farallones, I'd never seen killer whales come closer to the island than about 6 or 8 kilometers.
Here comes the shark, here comes the shark.
The whales had already eaten a large meal of sea lion.
There was really no reason for the orca to go after the white shark. The shark didn't threaten them.
And the killer whale took the shark without a struggle.
What happened in that 15 minutes? Did it ram the shark? Did it catch it and crush it? Did it hold it motionless so that the shark basically suffocated?
Then comes the biggest mystery of all. On the day of the attack, the entire great white shark population of the Farallones, up to 100 individuals, suddenly disappears without explanation. In October 1997, a whale watching tour goes on the trip of a lifetime and end up witnessing a historic face-off between the ocean's two top predators.
50 excited maritime adventurers may be the first people to witness
that
the killer
night,
whale
television
attack.
stations across California feature the story of the mother killer whale that killed the great white shark.
First time anyone's actually seen it happen.
The news reaches LA-based killer whale scientist Alyssa Schulman-Janiger.
I was returning from a walk and opened up my front door and heard the phone ringing. And I dropped my keys and raced to the phone and picked it up.
Hello.
And a friend of mine said, "You need to turn on the TV. Turn it on right now."
Their wildlife guide, the Oceanic Society's Mary Jane Schramm, spotted a 20-foot female killer whale trailed by her young calf.
In the 13 years, Schulman-Janiger has studied killer whales off the California coast. She's never seen one kill a shark.
Pretty much. I don't think anyone actually...
But there's another reason she's intrigued. She knows the identity of the killer.
Everything I did was based on how well you can identify an animal and track them. I take photographs and look at unique characteristics on the fins and in the body to try to tell which individual whale I'm looking at.
3 males off to the left and the female juveniles on this side.
All the researchers keep track of the whales, and for California, we've identified our whales with numbers.
Okay, that's a 39 right there. We have the one with the middle notch right here. She's got a juvenile with her.
So we have CA1, CA2, CA25, CA39, who we saw today, and CA indicates California.
We've got at least 3 adult males. We only had 1 yesterday.
So I've gotten to know the killer whales of California area pretty well, especially what I call the LA pod.
The LA pod is a group of killer whales occasionally seen off the coast of Los Angeles. It has 8 core members, and one of them was caught on camera at the scene of the kill.
And they showed the image, and the fin really looked a lot like CA2. I froze it, backed it up, froze it, and I saw her unique eye patch with her birthmark. There's no other killer whale in the world that has this birthmark.
Society excursion boat
Schulman
witnesses a killer
Janiger
whale attack
quickly
on a great white
realizes that
shark.
the news reports are wrong.
These underwater photographs of the juvenile whale feasting on mom's kill.
Said she's protecting her calf, and I know it can't be because CA2's never had a calf. In fact, LA pod has no surviving calves.
If CA2 isn't defending a calf from an intruder, it's possible that she sees the great white simply as food.
A little variation in the menu, perhaps?
The orca could be a predator hunting its prey.
To me, it didn't seem like it was really racing for it. It was more of a deliberate approach, and obviously a stealth approach.
It appears CA2 first stalks the shark.
The orca was holding it like just behind the head.
Then she grabs the largest predatory shark in the ocean in such a way that it renders it entirely harmless.
The white shark was completely immobilized.
Nothing from the shark. The orca just took it out in an instant.
The killer whale holds the shark upside down for a long period of time. The shark doesn't even fight back.
We didn't see any blood or oil slick.
There wasn't any obvious signs of trauma.
After 15 minutes, the killer whale rips the shark apart and starts eating its liver. The attack has all the markings of a perfectly executed kill. It's the first recorded event where a great white becomes the prey of another species. Scientists rush to figure out whether this was just a fluke or whether killer whales regularly hunt great whites in the wild. Killer whales live in every ocean in the world. They hunt a wide variety of prey. Ingrid Visser has been watching killer whales hunt off the coast of New Zealand for over 15 years.
The orca are very, very smart, and they'll look at a particular prey item and they'll understand, okay, I need to attack it in such a way. So it's just like us, really. I mean, you have different skill sets for dealing with different situations. So, for instance, if you go to Argentina, you see them coming up on the beach to take the sea lion pups. If you look at them in Antarctica, where they try and wash the seals off the ice, you'll see them coming in and making waves. And if you look, for instance, in New Zealand, where they hunt for the stingrays, and they can pull the rays very, very carefully out from underneath the rocks, or they can blow bubbles to scare them out from underneath the sand.
Killer whales appear to be able to figure out the best way to hunt any prey. But developing a new hunting strategy is not something that happens overnight. It can take years to perfect. Then, the strategy is passed from one generation to the next. Biologists call the resulting traditions a culture.
If you look at the definition of culture and you look at what's going on with these different populations of orca and the way they specialise in hunting, you can definitely say that they have a culture. And although that's something that we usually just associate with humans, for sure it's happening with the orca.
Probably have the carcass under the water right in this area.
The killer whales off North America's Pacific coast belong to 3 different cultures.
The first type that most people are familiar with are called resident killer whales. And they're resident either to Alaska or in most cases to British Columbia and Washington. Those are fish eaters, and they travel in large groups and they're very vocal. The transients tend to have a longer range. Those live in smaller groups and specialize in eating mammals. Also, there's the offshore type killer whales. They travel in very large groups. They're quite vocal and eat fish, groups of up to 100, for example.
On October 4th, 1997, CA2 killed both a mammal, a sea lion, and a fish, the shark. A pattern which doesn't fit any of the 3 cultures.
The LA pod, I feel, just doesn't seem to fit the other groups. Their vocalizations are different. The call does not match any of the other types. There's also been some genetic samples taken of animals off California, and they don't fit any other type. And the shape of their fin and the gray saddle area behind the fin doesn't quite fit into the other types either. They act different, they talk different, they eat different kinds of things. So the LA pod is an odd pod.
The LA pod is a group of killer whales that breaks the rules. It's possible they belong to their own distinct culture that stems from a different part of the Pacific.
The whales in California, I notice, don't have barnacles, long stalk barnacles hanging off their dorsal fin. But the LA pod is the only group of whales that we've seen in California that has it consistently growing off their dorsal fin. Most of the killer whales in Mexico have those, and it's something you really see in the south and tropical waters.
The evidence suggests the LA pod spends a lot of time in warm waters. These waters contain less food than the cold waters of the north. In this environment, one of the world's largest predators can't afford to be too picky.
Instead of being so specialized, they're more opportunistic. If the chance comes up that they might take a sea lion, for example, or fish if there's abundant fish, they seem to have the ability to vary their diet depending upon what the circumstances are.
The orca, known as CA2, is flexible. She's used to feeding on both meat and fish. But it's unclear why this orca would go after shark meat, unless the LA pod is a shark-eating culture. Ingrid Visser says it's not impossible.
There's different populations of orca around the world that specialize in hunting for sharks, and they hunt in a number of different ways. They will corral the sharks up, and then if they're small enough, just come in and grab them. But it is dangerous for them to hunt sharks. They do it very carefully.
On the other side of the Pacific Ocean in New Zealand, another shark-eating culture has worked out an ingenious way to kill its prey. It's a technique that might have dramatically affected the outcome of the clash at the Farallones.
If I was a shark living in New Zealand waters, I'd be very scared of orca, yeah.
A fighting maneuver that renders even the great white shark defenseless. Killer whales are incredibly skilled at finding new ways to kill a wide range of prey. But can they kill the most aggressive shark in the ocean without putting themselves? A team of shark scientists is looking for an adult female lemon shark.
Can you see it? See it?
They want to tag her in order to keep track of her movements in the months ahead.
Come on, guys, come on, closer. All right, get ready. Oh!
In danger. There's actually a technique that can render sharks harmless fairly easily. It comes in handy when studying dangerous sharks in the wild. Bimini, Bahamas.
She's ours now.
The team corrals her toward the lead boat, manned by Dr. Samuel Gruber, the head scientist of Bimini's Shark Lab.
Keep going, and not far, not close enough. Yeah. Yes. Get it on the side. No, in the water. Go in the water. Get her head in, get her tail in it, Fry, your tail. It's her tail.
Gruber wrestles the shark alongside the boat.
Put her head in there. That's it. Nice.
Every available hand helps to turn the shark over onto her back.
Good.
And when they do,
All right, okay, somebody's gotta
she
get the tail.
instantly becomes calm. Gruber has been working with lemon sharks since 1978. He studies the juveniles that live along Beninese mangroves. Here, he discovered something surprising.
One day I happened to turn the shark over like this, and I noticed that it stopped struggling immediately. So, something's going on here.
When turned upside down, the juvenile lemon sharks fall into a trance.
And he's sleeping.
Scientists call it tonic immobility, and they think it happens when a chemical is released into the shark's brain to prevent panic.
It wants to get its visual world right, and it's being inhibited or stopped from doing that. So the brain gets flooded with this neurotransmitter called serotonin. And when this gets an overload of serotonin, the animal goes into this sleep, basically unconscious.
Almost all sharks fall into tonic when turned upside down and can't right themselves.
Over, and she'll say, uh-oh, that's good. Goodbye.
This adult lemon shark is in a trance deep enough for the Shark Lab scientists to insert a transmitter into her belly without anesthetic. In this position, she is completely vulnerable.
Okay.
The killer whale at the Farallon Islands held the great white shark upside down for 15 minutes. The shark remained motionless. It never struggled. It seems the killer whale put the great white shark into tonic immobility and held it there. And this maneuver alone could be enough to kill a shark.
Right side up. When you turn a lemon shark upside down, it can continue to breathe in exchange. But if you turn a white shark upside down, it probably can't continue to breathe like that. A great white is a very energetic shark. It's a warm-bodied shark that will really require their bodies to move to help their heart pump. So eventually, not going to exchange carbon dioxide for oxygen because there's no water flowing through the gills, and their oxygen tension in the blood reduces down to a point where it's like, like suffocating.
The killer whale could have killed the great white shark by putting it into tonic immobility and then suffocating it. It's a technique she might have learned from her LA pod.
Is it possible that killer whales know about tonic immobility? The answer is yes, it is possible. Their learning abilities are so great that if one of them happened to do it and see that they kind of freeze or go into this state, they could communicate it to the other ones. And they might then get a hunting technique up that does this.
Killer whales are inquisitive, intelligent, and they learn from each other. If one of them stumbles upon this weakness of sharks, its pod could become accomplished shark killers. And that's exactly what seems to be happening in New Zealand. Here, killer whales hunt stingrays, relatives of sharks and almost as dangerous. The whales have learned to first turn themselves upside down before attacking the rays. Then, when the killer whales right themselves, the stingrays turn belly up and fall into a tonic state, becoming harmless. To Ingrid Visser, this proves that the whales know exactly what they're doing.
Given the precise way that these guys hunt for sharks and rays. I'm pretty sure that the tonic immobility is part of the repertoire of the orca. If shark researchers know about it, why wouldn't an animal that preys on sharks know about it as well?
If the LA pod frequently encounters sharks, they might have learned this secret too. And Shulman Janiger suspects the LA pod is no stranger to sharks.
With the LA pod, virtually every single animal has big chunks out of the dorsal fin. Other researchers who have looked at them said, your whales look like they just got beaten up, got in a gang fight or something like that. They can have scars on the dorsal fin and scars everywhere and chunks gone. So I think they might have a similar history with sharks and that this might indicate that.
Down south, in subtropical waters of Mexico, is where the LA pod may have learned how to handle sharks and come up with their effortless maneuver to place great whites into tonic immobility. Pyle's underwater footage of the incident reveals CA2's technique.
You could see that there's this white scraping of all the skin off her head and off her pectoral fins. And I believe what she did is rammed the shark very, very hard, kind of knocked the wind out of it.
With the shark now stunned, the next step is easy.
She could kind of extrapolate. If the small shark that I want to eat, I turn it over and it doesn't do anything, then in this instance, the best thing for me to do to keep from getting harm to my body is to turn over this big shark.
Based on the evidence, here's what probably happened at the Farallones. The great white surfaces to investigate the smell of the dead sea lion. CA2, the killer whale, detects the shark in the water. She responds instantly, ready to go for the kill. The inexperienced shark is unaware of the danger. The killer whale strikes the shark, stunning it. Then she holds it upside down in a state of tonic immobility until the shark suffocates. A precise hit carried out by an experienced member of a shark-killing culture. The great white shark is no longer an untouchable predator at the top of the food chain. It appears that sometimes even they are on the menu. If this is the case, great whites would likely try to escape whenever threatened by killer whales. And on the day of the Farallones' attack, that's exactly what happens.
Beginning that day, after October 4th, we didn't see any white sharks. And we knew on the island that they were gone.
The great whites flee en masse from the islands.
The Farallones is a major roosting area for seals and sea lions, in particular northern elephant seals, which is their preferred prey. It's been calculated that a white shark eating one seal can last it up to 3 or 4 months. And we've seen individual white sharks take up to 5 seals. So if you do the math, that's almost a full year's worth of energy that it can get in the 2 months that it's around the Farallones.
Peter Pyle and his fellow researchers have recorded every shark sighting at the Farallones since 1987. Each year, the same thing happens. The number of shark sightings around the island grows steadily from early September through October. Then it peaks in early November, when the seal population is at its highest. At that time, up to 100 adult great whites circle the islands. But after the October day of the killer whale attack, everything changes.
After October 4th, we just sat up there day after day and didn't see anything. We were putting decoys out and we were looking for shark-bitten seals and sea lions coming in, and none of these things were happening.
The great whites are gone. To Pyle, it means just one thing.
I'm absolutely convinced that the paucity of white sharks was due to that Orca event. They were more afraid of being there than they were about missing an entire season of feeding. So that's pretty remarkable.
No one knows where the great whites went. Then, a few years later, scientists discover the answer. After tagging great whites at the Farallones, they uncover the remarkable annual long-distance migration of great white sharks. After feeding at the Farallones during the fall, the great whites swim across the ocean to winter in a mysterious patch of the Pacific known as the White Shark Cafe. It's uncertain what the sharks do when they get there. In spring, some sharks swim beyond the cafe to as far as Hawaii. But they all meet up again in late summer before heading back to the Farallones to feed. The tags on the sharks allow scientists to track their entire journey. This becomes a useful tool when history repeats itself.
In the year 2000, on November 19th, another pod of orca came close to the island. And this was only the second time we'd ever seen this. One of the males made a big splash. And when I got up there, there was a huge group of birds, a slick on the water. There was pieces of white matter that looked like liver, and there was no blood in the water. It must have been a hit on a large fish. It looked very similar to the white shark attack in 1997.
It's a second orca attack at the Farallones. The remaining sharks vanish for the rest of the feeding season, just as they did in 1997. It's another flight of the whites. But this time, one of them is wearing a satellite tag. A 15-foot male great white shark named Tipfin carries his tag for 6 months. Then one day, the tag ejects and floats to the surface. The data it beams back is remarkable.
This is the dive profiles for Tipfin, and you can tell that on that day, very soon, almost immediately after the attack at the Farallones, Tipfin went over the continental shelf and immediately dove down to 500 meters depth. And then from there, he continued all the way to Hawaii.
After the second killer whale attack at the Farallones, Tipfin travels more than 2,000 miles across the Pacific. It seems like great whites would rather cross oceans than deal with the hungry killer whales.
The shark went down to 500 meters. You know, that's 500 meters, that's 1,500 feet. That's a long way down. So it was a traumatic event for these sharks, who would normally be staying around there for the season.
Great whites are ready to flee the moment their only predator, the killer whale, becomes a threat. At the Farallones, the great whites seemed to know that danger was near, as if there was a kind of secret signal that caused the whole population to abandon their feeding grounds at the same moment. Great white sharks aren't invincible. When threatened by their only predator, the killer whale, they flee in fear. But how sharks know when to flee has baffled scientists. Now, in a lab in New Jersey, shark repellent researchers Craig O'Connell and Eric Stroud are trying to find the answer.
So here we have a black-nosed shark. It's a distant relative to a white shark, but it's an ideal model. And the reason being is that they have the same senses that a white shark has.
Their research suggests that sharks flee when they pick up the smell of their own dead.
Clearly a potent chemical signal exists in the shark, and from our experience we know as that shark carcass breaks down and decays, it just releases more of these chemical signals, keeps other sharks away.
By extracting key chemicals from the tissues of dead sharks, they recreate the smell.
You combine these 6 in a certain ratio, it's like we've recreated a smell of death or something that triggers a flight reaction in the shark.
O'Connell suspects that it was the smell of death that scared the great whites away from the Farallones.
That white shark may have been leaking out some sort of alarm signal to its conspecifics, or sharks of the same species. And these sharks could have picked up on it with their sense of smell and decided, hey, someone just ate this other white shark, let's save ourselves, let's flee the area. And that, I think, is responsible for that behavior.
Stroud decides to test his artificial smell of death in Bimini on juvenile lemon sharks placed into tonic immobility.
Okay, Brian, let me know when he's under.
Yeah.
Looking good? Okay, let's see if we can get a response at a very low concentration, say about 0.1 milliliters. And we'll go to the nares. Okay, Brian?
Yep.
Head shaking. Okay, that was a good response.
The smell of death is potent enough to bring a lemon shark out of tonic immobility. It triggers an instinctive urge in the shark to flee.
So it was a small dose, very violent response. It's what we want in a shark repellent. A little bit goes a long way. They're very sensitive to these compounds. Their sense of smell is highly developed, so this was a very good response.
Sharks react violently to a concentrated smell of their own dead. But does the chemical signal work when diluted in the open ocean? Off Bimini, they spray the smell of death onto Caribbean reef sharks during a feeding frenzy.
Man, look at that one. Look at this. Look at this one go. He's out of there.
Man, that was great.
Gone. It's the smell of death. They just don't like it.
Man, they hit that stuff and they take off.
A lot of fish. Fish don't mind it.
At the Farallones, these same chemicals leaked from the dead great white, which triggered panic in other sharks in the water. But the islands extend over 100 square miles. The signal would have had to work over a large area of ocean.
Here in the Bahamas, it's very easy for us to do a repellent test because we've got all our sharks balled up, essentially. The white sharks are probably all seeking out their prey over a wide area. And in that case, it's kind of tough to make that couple liters of chemical signal work over maybe a couple square miles. From a single dead shark to maybe scattering hundreds of sharks, that's an incredible repellent. We have to know more about it.
The mass flight of great whites at the Farallones still isn't entirely understood. The scent of the dead shark rotting at the bottom of the sea would have driven some sharks away. But experts are still puzzled as to why the entire population of sharks fled.
The white shark orca encounter on the Farallones, it was unprecedented, and it certainly got a lot of attention. But when all of the sharks disappeared completely from the Farallones, that just really kind of blew our minds. And we spent a lot of time after that trying to figure out how this could be and how can all of the sharks disappear based on this one event.
The incident at the Farallones remains a mystery. But it has provided a better understanding of the relationship between the ocean's two top predators.
In my mind, it's really clear that we've got a top predator here, and no one would have really thought. There's always a question people have asked me, what would happen if you put a great white shark in a tank with a killer whale? Who's going to win? And I think there's no doubt now the killer whale would, through cunning, through intelligence, through long-lived, through culture, be able to overcome this possible adversary.
Great whites, the largest shark predators, are also prey. Some cultures of orca have figured out the secret weapon of tonic immobility.
So weird.
In the ocean, the orca reigns supreme. Great whites will flee if killer whales turn violent. The great white shark has met its match.
Standing proud off the coast of Dubai is one of the most incredible buildings on the planet. At 321 meters, it soars higher than the Eiffel Tower. It's the tallest hotel on Earth and the most luxurious. Its name means the Arabian Tower. This is the Burj Al Arab, a structure designed to amaze. But creating this 21st century icon was an epic struggle that pushed everyone involved to the limit. In November 1994, construction began on the world's tallest and most luxurious hotel. The pressure was on from day one. With the eyes of the world watching, no one on the project wants to disappoint this particular client. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, then Dubai's crown prince, is the visionary behind this amazing building. The project is his response to the economic time bomb his country confronts. As his close advisor, Sultan bin Saleem knows all too well.
He knew that we don't have oil. He knows that oil is going to end someday. And they have two choices. Either go and do something about it and find other alternative ways to sustain the life.
Establishing the site at Lumaco.
My house was over there.
Her goal is to find the specific animals that she identified and tracked before the war.
Yes?
Oh, yes. But in the Congo, simmering tensions could threaten to boil over. Without long-term security, the jungles will remain a place to hunt animals rather than study them. But if research can be re-established and the bonobo protected, who knows what revelations they'll offer. The bonobo's world is a kind of time machine, an important rear window on our own history. Bonobos can provide us with insight not only into the evolution of intelligence, but into our own social nature as well. Now that they've managed to survive the war, we have the chance to discover more about our peace-loving cousins and possibly find out more about ourselves.
On Nova's Last Great Ape website, meet an expressive bonobo named Kanzi. See a slideshow of bonobo gestures, explore a primate family tree, and more. Find it on pbs.org. Educators and other educational institutions can order this or other NOVA programs for $19.95 plus shipping and handling. Call WGBH Boston Video at 1-800-255-9424.